Hi, this is Vic Dorfman, the founder of MemberFix and co-founder of MemberHost. And I'm joined today by a good friend and a great entrepreneur, John McIntyre. John is a world-renowned copywriter and the founder of Drop Dead Copy and his most recent membership site project, Rageheart. John has one of the most popular email marketing podcasts on iTunes with more than 500,000 downloads to date. And John has spoken at some of the biggest marketing conferences in the world, such as Traffic and Conversion Summit and others. He's even got to hang out with Richard Branson on Necker Island for a week, learning from Branson and 30 other high-level entrepreneurs. So, John, welcome. You've seen the photo of Richard Branson water skiing with supermodels. You got to do that too, right?
Yeah, man. I even got to wear a bikini while I was doing it.
What happens on days on Necker Island? I get it. So one thing I've noticed about you, jumping right into some of these questions here, is that you're a very charismatic communicator, whether we're talking about your spoken word or obviously in your case, the written word copywriting. Is this an ability that you were born with, that you decided to expand upon and bring over to business, or is it something that you learned and refined over time?
It's a very good, I don't think anyone's ever asked me that question on a podcast before, but it's a great question. Because it's a good question, because some people have seen what I've done and be like, oh, I'm going to do that. I'm like, well, if you can't talk like me, you can't write like me, I wouldn't say to do what I did. Or that applies to anyone giving advice with, do a podcast, do this, do that. It's like finding, Dan Sullivan, we're both into that unique ability concept, where it's like finding the thing that you're really, really good at naturally. So I think for me, it comes from, if I look at my parents, quite charismatic. Mom is very, what's the word? Like very, very good at connecting with people and listening and talking and asking questions. My dad can be very charming, sometimes to a fault, when we talk about, say, manipulation, things like that. So I think it runs in the family. I was also raised probably to, I don't know if it's probably an element of nurture, but yeah, it certainly runs in the family. And then I think over time, based on feedback from other people and seeing what works for me, I've gone, podcast is easy. Like, some people recording a video and talking is the most painful thing they can think of doing. For me, it's one of the easiest things I can do. Doing this podcast with you, I'm going to finish this and it'll be like I've had a coffee. Most of the time, most podcasts, I guess, unless the person I'm talking to is a real bore, I walk away and I feel like I've had a coffee or something like that. So that I know that there's probably like the genetics into it. I know it gives me energy. I know I'm naturally good at it. So most people, unless they have that, I'll be able to just walk all over them. So I've consciously chosen to move in that direction. Writing is a bit harder. Writing is a bit more of I don't know, I'd say it's a struggle, but it requires a lot more of me. I can just talk and it usually comes out decent enough that people are like, oh, wow, that was really good. Writing is a bit more of a challenge. I'm decent at it, but yeah, so I'd say it's a combination of family, genetics, that kind of thing, and also a conscious choice to refine and build on that.
And I know that you were also in Christian ministry for a while, and it just brings me back a little bit also to my childhood. And you grew up in the US and in the South. There's a lot of churches and church activity. And what I've found is that this environment tends to foster certain things. It fosters musicality, for example. There's music in churches, right? It fosters, if you decide to go for the ministry, or to maybe if you're Mormon and you go to do missions, all of these different elements of speaking, persuasion, you're dealing with people all the time. Do you think that also contributed?
That's a good point. So like, yeah, you got the genetics, the family, what I'm raised in, but I was at church until 18, pretty much every week. We got Bible study, youth group, playing in the band once, twice a month, probably, especially once I learned to play the guitar. And then around like 16, 17, I guess some of the leaders at the church we were at, they could see potential. And so I was often getting singled out for, are you going to be a leader one day? You could be a pastor. I remember speaking at church and youth group doing, there's always like a youth pastor or someone doing the talk on some Bible verse. So I did that a few times right at the end, right before I left, and sort of gave at least organized religion up. And so yeah, all of that. I mean, I went to a very good, one of the best high schools in the state where I grew up. So there was a lot of factors like that for sure. Church definitely helped. And these days, I used to be very bitter about that. This is a bit of a tangent. And oh, church and their programming and the shame and the guilt and the sin. I used to be, yeah, so just, I didn't like it, man. I was so bitter about it. And then these days, being a little bit older, I can be like, man, that shit gave me so much. Yeah, it gave me a bunch of crap as well. And it's taken time to work through that and let that go. But there has been so much value and just beauty and joy and just great stuff that have come out of that being one of them. So the ability to communicate and connect and play music and talk to people. So, and I've done a lot of sales as well. That probably helps. So before I got into entrepreneurship, I was often doing sales jobs. It was probably because found it somewhat easy and it was just fun to sit around and talk to people and get paid for it. So, yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I guess that would lead into copywriting very naturally, all the podcasting you do. I know that was a main way that you've grown all of your businesses, is speaking at conferences and doing podcasts. But why specifically? Because you could have used those skills for any number of different types of businesses or business models. Why didn't you choose copywriting, not SEO, not web development, et cetera?
Well, I mean, at the time, this was 2011, 2012, I think is when I started. So 12 years ago now. I was in the Philippines working for a beach resort, a couple of resorts called Bad Lads. And the owner, I think his favorite thing to say when people say, why'd you call it Bad Lads? He's like, well, I was going to call it Good Lads, good and very well-behaved lads, but no one cared, so I called it Bad Lads instead. So I was working for him at this beach resort and doing his, I could do a bit of SEO. I built up a content website to make a few $100s a month. But at some point, while I was working with them, I was trying to get my own stuff going. And yeah, it wasn't going that well. At some point, I stumbled onto, I think it was through a mastermind, someone brought up Gary Halbert, copywriting, and I went into it and realized, hey, if I can learn how to do this ability to sell with words, then I'll always have a way to make money. It might not always be easy, but everyone in every economy always wants to make money. So if I have some, not just in sales, but the ability to write words that can get someone to buy something, I will never starve, which is so far for the last 12 years. I don't know if that's always going to be true, especially with AI and things like that, but certainly that has been true. It's been up and down. I've had my bad days, bad weeks, bad months, and my good times in the last 12 years, but I haven't gone back to get a job. I haven't quit. I've always been able to make enough money to pay my bills and get by. And so yeah, that was why I got into copywriting. And I thought too, I remember at the time thinking most people are not going to put in the time to learn this properly. Because whether it takes, just writing a lot of copy or handwriting a good copy out, and I was like, that's my advantage right there. If other people are not willing to do that, and I can beat them.
I think similar to yourself, I started out with copywriting on the Warrior Forum. And I'm really glad I had that experience because it was kind of an informal copywriting school because there was a salesperson. Everybody there was kind of a classical style internet marketer, of the Gary Halbert, Dan Kennedy type persuasion. So it was kind of funny. Everybody was selling to everybody else. And I was just seeing the way, for example, one thing I learned on the Warrior Forum, which still is super handy that I just don't see people doing, but it's just an amazing thing to do, was this endless wall of testimonials, hundreds upon hundreds of testimonials for a product or service. And if you have that, it doesn't matter what you're selling. At some point, people are scrolling down and they're going to think, holy shit. I mean, I'm not going to read all of this, but if this many people think that this thing is this good, it can't be total garbage. So it can kind of short circuit having to read a lot of copy if you just have a huge wall of testimonials. And I guess it's basically sales, right? Copywriting, would you say?
That's a famous quote, I think, from Cloud Hopkins, and maybe copywriting is salesmanship in print. So absolutely.
Right. And then so at one point, as you're doing your copywriting there, you decided to start teaching it and to show your expertise to others, to teach it. You started a members community, which is now sunsetted, I believe, called the McIntyre. Can you talk to me about how that came about, how it went, where did it go? And if you could please give a little bit of attention to some of the tech setup and services, team, et cetera, that you use to run it, that would be super helpful to the listeners as well.
Well, I honestly can't remember exactly why I started it. It was I remember where I was. I remember the house I had in Chiang Mai, Thailand, but I was doing client work. And I guess I was I can't remember the very absolute specifics, but I'm guessing it was something about, I've got clients, I'm making money, life is good, but I don't want to do client work. So I'm going to sell something. I'm going to make a product. I'm going to teach people how to do it. So that's what I did. I made the first week, the classic advice of don't build the whole product, just make a little bit of it and then try and sell it. I made the first week and then sold it. I think sold it to my own list and sold it with, did a couple of JVs, joint ventures with other people in that space. So I think that's why I started. That's how I executed it. So started with 1 week, sold a bunch, and then built the rest of it while they were going through because it was drip fed. Software was wishlist member, still is. It's still there. It's, yes, you could say it's sunsetted. I'm not actively promoting. It's really because I'm not actively working on drop dead copy at the moment. It sits there, it makes some money, but I'm not actively trying to grow it. My focus is elsewhere, which we'll get to a bit later. But yes, built on wish lists. It's always been on wish list. I've got WP complete in there, so I can have people mark lessons as complete and then get automatically redirected to the next lesson. It also gives them a progress bar. So I wanted like a visual 67% through whatever. So I think that's the main membership stuff. It's on WordPress. So WordPress wishlist member. WP complete was pretty cool. Running on pages are built in Thrive Apprentice because that website's built with Thrive themes, which was great. I don't use it anymore just because it felt too clunky and bloated, which is debatable, I think. But and then I just haven't been. So we went through a couple of iterations. At first, it was called the McIntyre methods. My surname, my legal surname is McIntyre, so then that became the McIntyre method. And then at some point, I was like, it was a $200, $300 product, I think, at the start. And then push that to, I think after watching Shremco stuff, I was like, I need a membership site where there's a subscription. So I changed the name to McMasters, changed the price to $77 a month, I think. And then sold that for a while. And there was a forum in there at one point. So there was, I don't know, what was the forum software? I'd have to look that up. It would have been one of the top few WordPress forum softwares that are around. I was at a forum in there for a bit, and then I think at some point flipped it back to calling it the McIntyre Method Masterclass, and instead of selling it for a monthly fee, which didn't work that well. Most people would sign up for a month or for a $1 trial and then cancel. But, retrospect, that was probably a part of the value proposition, as well as for an information product. I think a lot of people just don't want to, there's not really that much reason to keep paying, depending on how it's set up. So that was challenging. There's probably a lot of other people selling similar stuff. So there was a few issues with it, but then eventually changed that back to the McIntyre Method Masterclass, almost like a business in a box, and started marketing it instead of just to people who wanted to do email marketing, because that's what it was, a 4-week email marketing course, how to basically make a 10 email autoresponder sequence. Eventually sort of repositioned that as a copywriting course for freelancers. So the McIntyre Method Masterclass, you sign up, you learn how to make these 10 email autoresponders, and then you get some training as well on how to get clients, how to do sales, things like that. And then I was selling that for $1,000 usually on a webinar, which I did for a little while. For me, it was never like a huge money driver. In that business, the biggest revenue generators were bringing in actually doing bundles. So I'd take the McIntyre method and then I'd sell it alongside 15 other products from different copywriters in the space. We'd put it into a bundle, give it a big discount. That was probably the biggest sort of success story with that business that I had. But no, the membership was good. Webinar was on webinar. If you want the software there, I don't think it never got big enough to really require staff. So it was I could just reply to messages, forum posts, emails myself. I had a couple of people in that business helping me at one point. One guy was a copywriter, but not really for the membership. That was for clients. And one girl who was helping me with my emails. But on that business, like I said, it's not my focus right now. So it still makes money, but it's not something I'm actively growing. So the course is still up, I think, but I'm not pushing it. So does that answer your question?
Yes, and more, because I want to single out something that you mentioned, which is really interesting for other membership site owners who are looking for ways to grow their revenue. Well, 2 things you mentioned. First of all is you emailed your list to launch it. So maybe you can touch on the importance of every copywriter knows that the money is in the list. That's the big thing, right? For copywriting is you got to have a list. And the other thing you mentioned is that the biggest revenue generator was actually doing JVs and bundling your course, your product, your content with other people's, and then selling it as a big old bundle. And that is actually pretty common in sort of classical internet marketing circles, but there's no reason it couldn't work in something like crochet or any number of other things, or personal development, or whatever else. And why does that work so well, do you think?
I think it's when people know the value. You've got 5 courses that usually get sold for, I don't know, $100. I don't know if you'd sell a $100 course in the crochet space, but whatever the value is, people get used to seeing it at $100, and then all of a sudden they can get 5 courses just like that one for $100, and they're like, wow, that's insane value. If the classic, why do people like sales? Why do discounts work? It's just such a consistent thing. I think people, you got urgency. You can add some scarcity in by saying there's only X spots available. It's just an enormous amount of value. One of the guys in the one we did, a couple in 2021, I think, he sold as much as everyone else combined. It was 16 affiliates promoting, including me, this bundle that I made with these different people. And there is one guy, one copywriter, who probably doesn't even have the biggest list. He sold as much as everyone else combined. It was incredible. And the way he did that was he had these different products. They're probably all up totaled. Maybe you have to spend $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 to get them all. And he's like, I'm going to give you all of my, because he had one product in this bundle and then he had a few more that he hadn't included. He's like, look, if you get this bundle and you get the upsell, I'll throw in all my other products free. And so we made this incredible offer. I suppose you bring it back to that. It's not even the copywriting. It's just the offer. It's that you can get, I don't know, $5,000 worth of value for $200. And like, it's legitimate. Like, you don't get this bundle, you will literally have to pay that money. It's not that thing where people say value $2,000 and it's never been sold for $2,000. No, this is to get these products. You would literally have to pay $5,000, but right now you can get them for 500 or 100, whatever it is. So that's a bit of a all over the place answer, but really it's the offer, it's the value, it's discounts.
The people that you're selling it to, you have to have the list, have to have an engaged audience. Sounds like that's, again, that we take that for granted, but I think and the list doesn't have to be email necessarily, right? You can have a list on Facebook, you can have a list on any number of other platforms, on LinkedIn, depending on what your business is and where your people hang out online, right? But you need some kind of engaged audience to be able to sell them.
Yeah, I mean, the classic, I don't know who said it, but in copywriting or the marketing world, they talk about, people think copy is the most important thing. But this saying from somewhere is that your response, your 100% of your response rate, 40% is your audience or list, 40% is the offer, and only 20% is the copy. So if you have a really good offer and a really good list, you can have average copy, poor copy, and still crush it. But if you have a bad offer that no one really wants, you'd have the best list in the world and the best copy in the world, and you're not going to sell shit. So yeah, you absolutely need. So the offer is, what do they get for their money? What problem are they solving? What's the value that they're getting? And the list is obviously, email is just more direct than social media. You put a post on Instagram, you may not get that many people seeing it, but you send an email out, you get a 30% open rate. You can get thousands of people looking at that directly in their inbox quite consistently and quite easily. So yeah, if you got those two things in place, the copy it's important, but the other two things are more important.
Another interesting thing there that you mentioned is that you experimented with different ways to package the value. First, you tried a recurring method, like a monthly membership. And then you tried, I think you said it was $77 a month. And then you decided to bundle it all together and sell it for $1,000 off the back of a webinar. And what's interesting to me about that in the context of membership sites in general is that I think people sometimes get hung up on thinking that you have to sell something on a recurring basis when it may not have recurring value, or it might have recurring value because you could always come back and reference the Mc method if you're doing copy on a consistent basis. But will people pay for it on a recurring basis is an entirely different question. And if they won't, if people churn after the first month or few months, then you might actually have a better lifetime value on it's just your numbers, right? Your lifetime value would probably be better to package it as a course and then try to figure out a way to add recurring value that you could charge for on a regular basis. But you can't force the issue if it's not there,
I mean, these days, like personally, I much prefer, I'd rather have a business that does less revenue, overall revenue, but does it on a recurring basis than a business that's selling all this stuff up front, just because it gives you such a consistent, more predictable stream of revenue. Like it is the thing. If you sell something for $10 a month, people stay 3 months, you get $30. So if you can get a higher conversion rate selling for $40, you make an extra $10. But I'd probably rather have the $10 a month, because then it just creates this consistency. I wonder too, I haven't looked into this too much, but I'm guessing it makes a better equity value if you were to go to sell the business. If you're just selling one-off sales, I don't know if that's going to fetch as much if you try and sell that to someone, whereas you have a recurring billing thing and you can say, well, this revenue is going to last for this long, blah, blah, blah. So the way I did it though with that course, that membership, was I think at first there was 2 options. I don't know, premium and regular. They weren't called that. Might have been diamond and gold or something. And then it was 3 payments of $97 or 2 payments of $97. So it was sort of like recurring, but not indefinite, right? And then it became $77 a month later, and then eventually it became $9.97. So you're selling for $10 a month, and the average length is 3 months. You could then say, look, it's 6 payments of $10. And then you get the recurring element alongside, maybe there's a higher conversion rate, sort of like a blend between, it's not upfront, but it's limited. It's not an indefinite subscription, which I think a lot of people don't like. 6 months. So would you get a higher conversion rate, higher lifetime value on that? And then you still get a more consistency in the revenue. So,
yeah, I guess you have to experiment. You have to try different things and see what works for you, for your business. And actually, I remember before I ever met you in person, I think our first interaction was via email, because you reached out to me. This is before I ever hired a team for MemberFix, and I was doing all the membership site stuff, the tech and the consulting myself. And you engaged me for some consulting on how to improve the members community. And what really amazed me about that collaboration experience is that every single suggestion that I gave to you, you went and you promptly implemented it without really questioning after you thought about it. But you didn't come back and say, yeah, but that kind of thing. You just went and did it. And I actually don't know if those suggestions worked out positively or not, but I just know a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with overanalyzing, questioning everything, being paralyzed. And maybe this relates to the nervous system stuff that you do at Rageheart. But generally, it takes, for people like us, or maybe not from people like you, but certainly for myself, just years of smashing your head against the wall before you become less questioning, or let's say, like in the context of paying for advice or paying for mentorship. You mentioned Shramko. He's my business coach. 5 years ago, I probably wouldn't have listened to anything anybody said anyway. But now, because I've done that enough, I just know that, okay, if somebody's ahead of me and they have all their bona fides and they've done everything I've done repeatedly, sort of questioning in my head, I just fucking do it. And it could be wrong still, because that person isn't in your business and they don't know all the nuance of your particular situation. Even if it's wrong, sometimes you're still better off just doing it. And that's what I'm finding more lately, but sounds like you were switched onto that a long time ago. How important have you found that as a characteristic of your entrepreneurial career? When does it serve you? When does it hinder you to just do it?
That's another good question. If we looked at our Colby scores, I'm like a 9 or a 10. So Colby, for people who don't know, is like a personality test for entrepreneurs. I can't remember what all the dimensions are. Like there's 4 of them. One of them is quick start. You're kind of person who you tell them something and they're like, okay, it's done. And I'd be 9 or 10 on a quick start for sure. Like, and just not with everything, but most of the time, like if there's something that I'm like, oh, this makes sense to do, I'll just do it. And I think I don't know why I'm like that. You could go back to like, is it genetics? Is it family? My dad would be a very high quick start, I think, if he ever bothered to do the Colby. Where I lack, and where I think maybe I get this from dad as well, is follow through has been a very big challenge. So like I can start stuff, I can get things done if it's really short, but sticking to something long term, that's been a lesson that I've had to learn, which has taken time, and I'm a lot better at it these days. So I'd say most of the time, being the kind of person who you can tell me something, you'd be like, oh, I can do this, I'll just go and do it. Being that kind of person has probably served me very, very well. That hasn't really been my limiting factor in my own path. If there has been a limiting factor, it's been jumping around a bit too much, starting something, being like 3 weeks later, being like, well, that's it now, I'm going to go on to something else. But for a long time, I thought that was probably an element of, because I guess some people wonder, why do you do that? Why are we like that? Part of it, I think, was just not doing something I cared about, because now I've got a new business where I'm like, it's so passionate about it, and I'm not constantly changing it, changing the product. There's an element of, I still like to try new things, and they're still high on the quick start. So I need to be a little bit careful but having a sense of purpose and believing in what I'm doing helps. The other side is just being more regulated in myself, in my nervous system, in my emotions, mentally, all of that. So I think that's the truth. And I think probably most entrepreneurs are like, a lot of entrepreneurs are high quick start, because if they weren't, they wouldn't have done it in the first place. I think I've got a fairly high, I can see it in my tolerance for risk. Live with my sister here in Peru. And I'd say she's probably a little bit less on the quick start, maybe a bit higher on the follow through. And it's interesting watching how our relationship to money and how we spend money. And I will, at least with business stuff, with courses, books, for a long time, I'd be like, I'll just, as long as the money's there, I'll just spend. I don't even think about it. I'll just buy it, whether I use it or not. Or if maybe I watch one video, maybe I just got what I need. I wanted that, and that's it. I won't even finish the course. Books, I do it all the time. She's a lot more conservative. She'll manage her money a lot more carefully. And so it's interesting I look at my parents, my mom and dad. My dad has actually done really well for himself financially from what I can see. And yet he's been all over this, really terrible at following through and getting things done all the way to completion. Whereas my mom has been the other way around. And so it's interesting watching. My dad has had a lot of ups and downs, financially. He's been broke, and then he's got a bunch of money, and he's broke, he's got a bunch of money. But in the long run, that strategy has worked out very, very well, I think, financially. Whereas the more conservative approach, playing it safe, not taking too many risks, maybe being really high on the follow through, because I've seen that in say my mum's life, and everything's fairly consistent and steady, and probably a lot more relaxed and stress free. But she hasn't, financially, from what I can see, it hasn't like blown up into this massive net worth or success story. So it's interesting. I was chatting to my sister about this recently, of what are the pros and cons of these different, operating strategies. And so it seems like you need to be willing to take some risk and do get things done. It's sort of a tangent from your original question, but it's like being the kind of person who's just going to get shit done, dry stuff, and then hopefully having enough follow through and enough maturity to capitalize on that instead of bouncing around all over the place. So to summarize all of that, bouncing around, it's helped, I think, in terms of risk, getting things done, speed, but the limiting factor in all of that, I think, is the shit needs to get done to completion, or it doesn't really count for much. And that's probably been that's where it's cost me.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Everything you just said, actually, it's funny. And I have that same dynamic with my wife, where she's very conservative, and I'm just like, no, let's just like buy the thing. Let's buy our time back. Let's hire, a maid, a nanny, this and that. But, she's thinking more maturely, actually, from a financial standpoint. And so it's nice to have that counterbalance, because if it were up to me, I would spend every dollar that I have. And not that I've tried profit first and all these different things to kind of say, and I just suck at it. And you just have to admit when you suck at something. But yeah, as you get older, you realize, well, if that's not a really good way to live your life, because you need to have savings and you need to invest money into things, you're not going to do that, spend it all. And another funny thing you mentioned there, you mentioned the Colby. Speaking of not being coachable, I tried taking the Colby maybe 4 or 5 times, and I could never get through it's a short test. So I don't know, maybe 50 questions or something. But the problem with it for me is I was reading the questions, and I'm like, these questions are bullshit to begin with, or they're asking you to choose between 4 dissimilar things, and maybe neither of them is the actual answer. And I thought, how could you make any, if the premises are wrong, you garbage out, and how could anything, now I'm not knocking it, I'm sure it's effective, on a statistical level, but I couldn't do it. And I just refused to do it. And maybe that's just a big problem. I don't know.
I got a friend of mine who loves his personality test, another entrepreneur, quite successful, and he loves this stuff. It's like crack. I mean, I think personality tests are like crack for people. It's debatable to me, like how useful they are. I don't know, Dan Sullivan and those guys, they love this stuff too. And they use it to make business decisions. For me, without even doing the Colby, I probably know that about myself. Know that I'm good at starting stuff. I know that, if I think something's a good idea, I'll just start. I remember a friend of mine, when I was making music a few years ago, he was like so shocked that I would make a song and the song wouldn't even be very good. It'd be like the 3rd song I've ever made, like, with Dan's music production. It was obviously not that great, but I would go and run a Facebook ad and say, hey, look, if you like Martin Garrix, it's an EDM producer, you might like this song. And my song was not even close to Martin Garrix. But to me, it was like, oh yeah, like, what's the big deal? I'll just put an ad up. Like, we'll get some fucking trolls who don't like it. Cool, whatever. Whereas to my friend, that was such a huge thing to him. He was like, I can't believe you did that. Like, I would be so terrified of what everyone would say. Whereas to me, I'm like, it's not that it feels good when people don't like it, but I'm like, I just don't care for the most part. So I kind of know I've kind of got that without the Colby. So I don't think Colby or the Strengths Finder or any of these things are necessary. But they're fun to, it's probably like they're fun to just talk about. It's like your star sign. What's your star sign, Vic? I'm a Virgo, like that kind of stuff. Fun to talk about, especially if you're a chick, apparently. But I don't know how actionable or practical or useful it is. So I don't blame you for being skeptical.
Spoken like a true Sagittarius.
That astrology thing, that's a whole other conversation.
Let's take a quick tangent. Let's take a quick break from the membership stuff. And let me ask you about your hats. So for anybody who's listening, who's not watching the YouTube replay of this, John's got a baseball cap on with a picture of, it's a sewn patch of a skull with crossbones, but he's kind of smiling. He's a little cartoony, and I think he's got is that a military helmet on or just a hat?
Dude, it's from One Piece, which I've never seen. There's an anime show, really popular, famous anime show, which I have not seen. I just saw this hat, was like, oh, it looks half decent, at least compared to the other hats they had in the store. So I'm going to get this one. But then I've been walking around my local neighborhood here, and every now and then it's going to be like, One Piece. So it's the logo, I guess. I don't really know, but it's an image from this anime TV show, which I will watch one day, but I have not done so yet. So if someone is watching and they've seen One Piece, they might recognize this.
Did you just think it was cool, or did it have some kind of symbolic meaning for you, some kind of reconciliation with death, or you're just like, no, this is fucking cool, I'm getting it?
I was just looking for a hat. I probably wasn't even thinking this is fucking cool. I was like, out of all these hats here, this one it looks the best to me. That's probably about as much as thought as went into it. There was no big overarching theme to it. I didn't really think about it that much. So yeah, let's get this one. So
it looks appropriate for your new venture. Speaking of which, you have a new venture. I think you're still writing copy for it, but you have a new business, very different from the kind of work you were previously doing. In fact, you moved halfway across the world, full way across the world, really, to do it and to get better at it. Tell us about your business. Tell us about Rageheart.
All right. So you said the name, like Braveheart, Rageheart. And what does it do? What do I do with that? Look, I've realized I'm doing some training. I've just gotten onto Instagram and TikTok and YouTube recently. And after saying, screw social media, I hate it, I don't want to do it, I'm just going to do email, maybe some ads, that's it. I've been like, well, certain times it's like, well, I need to suck it up and start getting myself out there. So getting a Rageheart out there. So I'm on social media. I'm going through this course right now. It's like, you need to choose a niche. Most basic advice, stuff I've heard 1,000 times before. We've all probably heard. And the challenge with this is number one, explaining what the hell it is. And number two, who the hell is it for? So what is it is, I'd say the problem that it solves for people is nervous system dysregulation. I said it to most people. They're like, what the hell is that? I don't know what that is. That's not a problem that I have. And I would say that most people, most places in the world have some amount of nervous system dysregulation. They just don't know it. How do they know they've got it? Well, if you procrastinate, if you get distracted easily, if you have imposter syndrome, fears, doubts, anxiety, depression, trouble sleeping, trouble falling asleep at night, maybe you wake up at night, maybe you don't wake up and feel refreshed the next day, maybe you use porn, cigarettes, alcohol, drugs, shopping, spending money, whatever it is, to manage your state of arousal, not sexual arousal, but, arousal in the nervous system. Bad boundaries, getting easily manipulated, feeling like you're not really on your purpose, doing what you want to do with your life. These are all autoimmune diseases, even Crohn's, IBS, suppose all that stuff, skin conditions. A lot of this stuff can be traced back to what's called nervous system dysregulation. So because everyone has a nervous system, technically the potential market for this is every human being everywhere, because I think most people are going to have some amount of this. Then you just have the stress of living in modern society, right? Where sort of constant low-level stress that most people don't actually know how to manage or deal with very well. So the point is, Rageheart solves the problem of nervous system dysregulation by helping people to learn how to regulate what's going on in their nervous system. And how do you know if you have it is all those different symptoms I just mentioned. So where I'm getting to right now, I've been playing with the last 24 hours or so, kind of going, okay, I can say it's nervous system dysregulation. No one cares about that because they don't know about it. So, okay, it's going to be anxiety, stress relief. That's what I'm seeing on Instagram. Anxiety, stress relief, trauma healing, you could say. The problem with saying trauma healing, though, is Most people will be like, I don't have no trauma. Most entrepreneurs I know are probably like, oh, I'm not traumatized, which, yeah, maybe they never got raped or something like that. But trauma in this world of nervous system healing just refers to stored energy in the body that's keeping the system in dysregulation. All the times we were upset, angry, whatever it was, and didn't feel it, it gets stuck inside. And if people want evidence of that, just think about how many triggers or buttons you have that someone can say the wrong thing to you or push onto that and either control you or you get angry at something that you're like, why am I getting angry right now? Why am I getting afraid of this right now? Why am I procrastinating so much? We all have these buttons. They're caused by this stored energy, stored stress, stored emotion from the past. That, in the nervous system world, is trauma, the stored energy. It's not the event. So it doesn't have, you don't have to have a bad thing that's happened to you, a big bad thing that's happened to you. It just means that if you have this stored stress and it's keeping your system in survival, activation, dysregulation, you have quote unquote trauma, to use the word that way. Maybe we shouldn't use the word. I don't use the word trauma with Rageheart for that reason. So that's the problem. As far as who it's for, this is what I've been playing with is, here's what I got for you, right? This is what I've been playing for the last 24 hours is instant stress relief for, say, entrepreneurs without meditation and gratitude lists and journaling, or without whatever the things are. That's what I'm sort of playing with. Like, what is it? Instant anxiety relief. And when I say instant, there's a chick, one of my clients' testimonials, she talks about being in the supermarket and she's feeling anxious. There's lots of people around. Everyone's like stumbling around, thinking about their work. And she's like, oh, star, I got Rageheart. I can do that. Let me just put my attention in my toe. It's one of the techniques I teach. And I see what happens. She does that. She's like, oh, there we go. I'm here instantly. She'll go out of that again and she'll have to bring herself back. But like in an instant, in a supermarket, there's no meditation cushion. You don't have to get out your journal and start writing to your diary or start, what am I really grateful for this? Fluorescent lights in this supermarket. There's none of that. You can just do it walking around the supermarket. No one has to know. So instant stress relief, instant anxiety relief, something like that for whoever, for creators, for entrepreneurs, without meditation, gratitude list, journaling, stoicism, insert whatever self-help technique that most people have tried that often doesn't really work beyond the acute moment that it's applied in. So Rageheart is a system for doing all of that. To sum it up, I would say instant stress relief seems to be the best thing. Instant anxiety relief, shut your brain up, whatever. It can be for anyone, but I think it needs to be for someone. And what I'm thinking is entrepreneurs, creators, membership site owners, if we're going to do it for here. So for entrepreneurs, I like entrepreneurs, but it might need to be a little bit more narrow than that without all the shit that most people recommend that doesn't really work that well, at least not long term. And that's what I hear from a lot of people. They've done the meditation, they've done the gratitude lists, and it helps, at least in the moment that they're doing it. But then they're at a social event, they're out with a girl or a boy or whatever, something bad, triggering happens, and they're straight back into their anxiety, their stress, their pain. This is a way to get to the root of it, to solve it somewhat permanently, I'd say, because you get the stress out, the trigger's gone. That's why I say without meditation. You don't have to meditate every day. Without stoicism, without ice baths or ice showers. So yeah, just a set of techniques, a set of like this theory, map, sort of I sort of explain it like if you're hiking, you need a map of the terrain, where to go, how not to get lost, and then you need tools. So Rageheart is the map of your nervous system and why things get stored, or how stress gets stuck in the body, all of that. And then you have tools for changing it, or instant stress relief. That's like your hiking boots, your hiking poles, your backpack, some gloves if it gets cold. So a map, tools for instant stress relief, that's Rageheart.
And how is the membership actually set up? How's the content delivered?
So I'm running on a platform which I really like, called Experienceify. So Experience, drop the E, they've been fantastic. They're like a gamification platform. So most membership platforms, it's, Thinkific, I think, all these ones, it's usually a bunch of videos in a membership site area. There may be a couple bells and whistles, but it's usually videos, maybe some comments, mark a thing is complete. That's kind of it. Unless it's changed in the last couple of years since I started Rageheart. But when I started Rageheart and set the course up a couple of years ago, I was looking for something like an app without having to spend $50,000 to build an app like Headspace. And so I found this platform called Experienceify, and they do all this gamification stuff. So you can have your membership site with, your videos and everything like that. But in addition, you can have, when you mark a thing as complete in Rageheart, there's a sound, and there's the gamification thing, triggering dopamine. There are random celebrations. So when you mark a thing as complete, an animation pops up on the screen. It's kind of silly stuff. It's a bit like gimmicky, and yet it's proven to trigger the brain to release dopamine. These are, from what I understand, fairly well researched mechanisms in the brain. They do it in casinos with, say, slot machines. So it has a bunch of those different features. It's got great email automation features. So I can be like, when someone finishes this raid, wait 2 days, then send them an email. Rage is a lesson. Send them an email that will unlock Rage 2, and then send them an email that says Rage 2 is now available. You can say, when you mark this thing as complete, send them an automatic voicemail to their phone, send them a text message. It's a really powerful platform. The support is fantastic. I think that's pretty much it. That's all as far as the membership site itself, it's just that, because they do the email automation, they run the software. It's very powerful. They have a membership feature, like a community feature, which I'm not using right now, but it is available. You can do things like, when someone finishes this rage, this lesson, automatically post this on Facebook and say, congratulations, Vic Dorfman, for completing rage number 2. But you can automatically post that in a Facebook group to say, generate engagement in that way. It's a really cool, never seen a platform like this. I'm not looking for one right now, but it's like these kind of features, you only really, from what I've seen, is you only would see it in like a custom built app. You don't see it in like a standard member. You wouldn't see it in Wishlist Member or something. Or if you did, it'd be probably a whole bunch of custom stuff. So they'd be fantastic. That's pretty much it. I don't have any, just handles everything. There's no, the website runs on my website. The front end website runs on WordPress. The back end membership is on Experientify. You can add actions beneath each video. So like each video, I'll be like, number 1, mark the video as complete. So watch the video. Number 2, try this exercise. Number 3, do it again at 3:00 tonight. Each time you click that, it'll be like a rock and roll. You've heard it, like a rock and roll riff, because I was trying to create this Rageheart. People think about feeling and emotions and all that stuff. It's girly, it's soft, it's all that stuff. And so Rageheart, it's red, it's black, it's got some rock and roll music in there. So you can customize all that stuff with Experientify. So yeah, it's an amazing platform. If people want like a more, just a better, I think, membership platform, I would definitely recommend checking it out. They do the checkout. I don't use them for my checkout. I use Thrivecart for the checkout, but Experientify can do all that stuff too.
Liked it too. I was a member of Rageheart, which I fully recommend. It's really an excellent set of tools for helping you deal with life. And I think also a lot of entrepreneurs, or a lot of people in business in general, what are we doing? We're sitting behind a desk most of the time. We are really good at putting our sensations to the side. If you feel tired, fuck you, wake up at 4 a.m. anyway. Oh, you're hungry? Well, fuck that. I have a Zoom call, or I have a sales call, or I have this or that. And you just get really good at ignoring your sensations that your body, your signals that your body is sending to you. And then depending on your past and on your trauma and so forth, you might be in a pathological state of dysregulation, so much so that you don't even know how bad it's inhibiting you from not only being effective in business, which it's great to be effective in business, but just from enjoying your life. And as you said, being able to deal with difficult people, challenging situations, your capacity for stress, all of these things. So I really love Rageheart. I recommend it. In fact, I want to resubscribe because I know you've added a bunch of new rages in there. So definitely recommend it. It's rageheart.co, right? Rageheart.co. One thing I wanted to ask you, and I want to start wrapping things up. We've been doing a good hour here, is in addition to being something that you're obviously super passionate about personally, and it's something that I'm really interested in too, we're always sending each other messages about this kind of stuff. What made you feel confident, or if you felt confident, that this would be something that people would actually want to buy, that it would be a good niche or market, and that it would be a good business model, specifically the way that you're currently selling?
Well, 4 years ago, when I first found this stuff, I was in Thailand and I'd been through a pretty rough experience with some coaches. And I'd been meditating and doing TRE, which is like a trauma release exercises, what it stands for. I'd done gratitude lists and journaling. It wasn't really about the coaches. I've been doing that since I think 18. And when I was partying a lot, drinking, taking drugs, all that stuff. At some point, I'm like, this is enough. I can't keep doing this because I'm going to be 30 years old, washed up, and look like a piece of shit. So I'm going to stop. I'm going to start meditating. I was at 18, and so I got very into self-help with gratitude lists, journaling, stoicism. Man, I had done talk therapy, life coaching, business coaching, psychedelics, breath work, ice baths, ice showers, all this stuff. I've done a lot of different things. I remember a friend of mine would say, I tell him about some new book I'm reading, some self-help thing. He's like, man, you're addicted to self-help. Like some people, cocaine, you snort self-help. You're like addicted. You need to stop. And I'm like, bro, I have to tell him, leave me alone, man. Like, this is going somewhere. I don't know where. I just know something is missing. Something is wrong. And I'm trying to find the answer to this. And I'm not saying that none of this stuff worked. It all helped. But after, 18, 19, I started meditating. Look, by the time it's just, 30, 31, more than 10 years, I still felt like something wasn't right? Something's off, something's, my mind is still just relentless, negative. I still feel stuck. And it was the kind of thing where I'm like, something's off, something's wrong, but I don't know what it is. There's all these different practices. A lot of the people think the mind is the problem. And that's mental health, we call it, as if all these problems get just a mental issue, an issue of understanding or mental intellection. And so I was still meditating, still doing all those things. And yes, it probably helped me in some useful ways. But then, about 4 years ago, I spoke to a friend of mine. She told me she just started seeing a somatic therapist, and something about the way she described her session sparked something in me where I'm like, I have to try that. There is something here. And so I did some Googling, found an article, which led me to a course, and which led to another course. And I remember within 2 weeks, I was like, I could just feel it. This is what I've been looking for this entire time. It's 12, 13 years. This is what I've been looking for. I remember feeling like I made more progress in a week, gotten more of what I wanted in a week with that stuff than in the previous 12 years. So I remember at the time being like, this is amazing. This is so next level. It's not different to everything else. Everything else is trying to achieve the same outcome, which is, you could say wholeness, healthy. I don't want to say mental health because it's not just a mental thing, but it's all going towards the same goal or trying to solve the same problem. But getting into this stuff was like, this is better. This is like, I've just gone from like standard definition or pixelated TV with broken pixels to high definition with a map that actually works. I can actually know where I am, where I'm trying to get to, and how to get there. It was so next level. And 4.5 years later, I still feel that way. Like it's not, a lot of courses, a lot of techniques. You do it for a bit. Oh yeah, it's kind of cool. And then you get onto something else. And I've tried different things over the last few years. And, but I keep coming back to this. This has become the standard by which I compare everything else. I'll hear about some Stoic book or whatever, and I'll read that for a bit and compare it to what I'm doing now. And I'm like, just nothing has come close to beating this. I'd say the only two things, and these two things really work in tandem with it, is jujitsu, which you'll understand what jujitsu does for getting you into your body and teaching you to feel and understand how to move through discomfort. And then psychedelics, which just from a legal perspective, I can't recommend to everyone, but I'd say if you do it right with the right people, safely, they can be a very, very powerful agent of change. But this somatic stuff, what I teach with Rageheart, was just so next level, where it's like, how is this like meditation? You see how big meditation is. You see how big yoga is, journaling, gratitude lists, ice baths, all this stuff. And I'm like, none of that, at least for me, in my experience, none of that came close to what this stuff gave me, this stuff in Rageheart, this nervous system approach. And so as far as where the business opportunity comes in, how is this not mainstream? How is this not more widely known? How is this not taught in schools? It's from my experience, and I've seen it with other people too, this isn't an isolated thing. It's better than all this other stuff. Not to say that this other stuff can't work, but it's almost like, maybe one way to think about it is like there's all these different pieces, gratitude lists and journaling and meditation. All these things have their place, but without like something to unify it together, to fit it into almost like a universal theory of it all, it's kind of hard to know what's actually going on, tumbling around in the dark. What the nervous system approach did was like, oh, now I understand what we're trying to do here. Now I have a map for all of this stuff, and I can plug in these other techniques, but now I know when they're working and when they're actually hurting me. And so you see all that, you're like, man, how is the amount of money, the amount of size businesses that are in these different fields, and they're not teaching this. This is not well known. So it's the natural step from that to going, I could have showed this to people. This is so good. This is so powerful and so next level that people need to know about this. People need to understand what this is, and not just people who you're walking around traumatized, but people like you and me, people who aren't, say, struggling that much. They're not, their life isn't falling apart. They're the kind of people who are meditating or writing in their journal or doing gratitude lists, and they don't feel maybe that bad, but they also feel like they could be a lot better. Maybe they're living their life on half a tank or half an engine. And so that's the goal with Rageheart, is to go, let's take this stuff. It's a lot of women in this, mainly women in this space, because it's all about feeling. So the branding is all very feminine and soft, the language, the websites, all of that. So Rageheart is like, let's take this stuff and let's make it cool. Let's make it sexy. Let's make it feel powerful and strong. So it doesn't feel like a spiritual thing where you have to wear white and beads and pray and all of that. That this is something that will make you, even in jiu-jitsu, I feel like it makes me a better jiu-jitsu, a better fighter, because I'm better able to regulate my energy, which is a huge part of jiu-jitsu, energy management. A huge part of jiu-jitsu is if I can manage my energy, my stress response, my activation in my nervous system better than the guy I'm rolling with, all I got to do is just wait till he's tired, and then he's mine. So it's like, this is not just like an airy, fairy, hippie, effeminate kind of thing. It's legit, man. And most people don't know about it. So that's why I think, you know what, this would probably make a good business.
And it just got me thinking that maybe even niching down could be not the way to go. Maybe this is one of those things like, the Wim Hof method. You just got to go out there and just kind of go so big with it that people will realize the application of it for everything, for athletics, for business, healing trauma, for any realm of human endeavor. It can make you indefatigable. And
yeah.
Of course, that's easy to say. It's hard to do that when you're trying to build a business. You got to channel it somewhere.
The idea with niching is it's not that you stay there. And I'm like, the course is made. I'm not going to go through and redo the course for entrepreneurs or for whoever, but just as a way to kind of, you start with like a small group of people, and then once you get it working there, then let's open it up a little bit and then broaden it. So yeah, the point isn't to stay there. The point is just, it's easy to start. Kind of like, I think PayPal, they did this, where they started their whole thing where they couldn't get traction. It wasn't until they like, okay, let's focus on just the specific market of eBay sellers. Once they did that, that's when they got product market fit. That's when things took off. They started with it's something I fight for. I don't know why. Maybe this is just not my skill set, or I resist this idea of having to focus on a tiny little group. But there's lots of stories. That's where people find traction, and then they scale and expand from there. So
maybe you can target lists of Moleskine journal buyers. Just an idea.
That's pretty target. I was thinking like creators, and then you keep narrowing it down. Like you could do like membership site creators. Then you could do like gardening membership site creator. But then it's like, at some point it's too small, so it's like finding that, or people selling this is a whole fascinating topic. People on Instagram doing like Instagram strategies for creators. That's a pretty broad market. They'll have hundreds of thousands of followers. So how far now do you narrow it? It's like,
you do corporate
as a piece of string.
Sure.
You do corporate. I think for me, something in the entrepreneur, whether it's entrepreneurs or creators, I like that direction, because that's me. That's what I've done for the last 12. Freelancers, copywriters is too small, I think, because then I can just speak about my experience and it's authentic and real, whereas I'm not a corporate person, even though one day I might go to corporate people.
And I feel that entrepreneurs are, again, it's a group of people that, first of all, you resonate with, and you are one yourself, but it's a group that you can really help, and that are generally going to be hungry for anything that will give them an edge. So I'll be really interested to see where this all goes. I know you've been working on this for a while now, and I'm always looking at your updates and getting your emails, and it's just really interesting to follow your journey. So John, thanks so much for sharing all of those great tips and for getting into the weeds with some of the tech stuff. I hope this was really useful for our listeners. And to wrap it up, where can people find you online?
Yeah, man. So, best place is probably Rageheart. Like Drop Dead Copy's still up, but it's not, like I said, I'm not actively working on that. It's the best way if you want to reach out. Is Rageheart, like Braveheart, the movie, but rageheart.co, not .com, .co. You can go there. You can, I think on the homepage right now, you can scroll down. There's a long article. You can get on the list that way. You can also, down the very bottom in the footer, links to Instagram, YouTube, and Spotify for the podcast. On TikTok too, but I'm not like I don't really care about TikTok that much. So yeah, you can follow me on the socials. You probably just search for Rageheart too and you'll find me. Or go to the website and contact me. There's a contact form, or it's an affiliate program if you want to promote this stuff, or you can just get on the email list. Whatever floats your boat.
Awesome. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Vic.